Okay. All right. So the recording has started. Thank you all for joining today for today's meeting of the Crash Data Consortium. My name is Eric Broughton. I'm a senior safety planner here at the Denver Regional Council of Governments, or DRCOG. I really appreciate the time everyone's taken to come out today and for being a part of this process over the last couple of years. A quick look at our agenda. So first thing that I want to go over is just because we have a fair amount of folks joining today, probably will not be doing a full, let's not go around the room introductions, but if you could, please go into the chat and put your name, organization you're representing, and title. That's helpful just so everyone knows who is in the room. And also, when we get to any questions and answers with any of our guests, if you can please just share your name and your organization, that is also helpful just for the framing of everything. I'm going to start us with just a quick update on some of the work that we've been doing here at DRCOG and with our partners. First, implementing some of the strategies laid out in our final report published last year. Then we'll go on to a presentation and demonstration from the Iowa DOT and their partner Technology Enterprise Group. We'll get a presentation from the City and County of Broomfield, GIS and Traffic Engineering, as well as an update from Stolfus and Associates on the work that's been done over the last few years to update the Investigating Officers Crash Manual and some of the training videos that have been produced. And then if I can just ask one of my, maybe Carolyn, if you could keep an eye on the participants and let folks in as they come, that would be really helpful. Thank you. All right, well, to kick us off, so earlier this year in February, we had done a workshop, both online and in person, or mainly in person, both an online component shared afterwards to help us try to prioritize some of the strategies that have been laid out in our report. And the top three that were identified by participants, both in person and with the online comments, really came to requiring certain fields that were useful for analysis, such as the harmful events, location, latitude, et cetera. Encouraging the law enforcement, CDOT, Department of Revenue, and others to enhance the required fields and logical validations. These are things that can help to reduce the introduction of errors into the process, as well as researching and consolidating the statewide crash reporting into a single application. We have really been looking largely into this third one, mainly because the first one is a little bit on hold with some of the work, as I understand it, at Department of Revenue with the code freeze on their system. As well as just needing some more engagement with this group on identifying these. CDOT is doing a really good job, and I want to acknowledge that with working with law enforcement agencies on some of these errors and validations. So we really wanted to take a look at how can we be the best value for this. And so we have been looking at researching different systems, both in the state as well as outside of the state, which is what we're going to talk about today. If you've been with us before, you've likely seen this little graphic. Kind of the idea behind all this is sort of a cascading effect of a lot of these recommendation strategies, including all three of these are related to, kind of standardize and improve the input coming from law enforcement. We want to recognize that law enforcement is out there every day responding to crashes. They're putting themselves in harm's way in many cases, and we want to make sure that we're keeping them safe, they're able to do their job safely and effectively. And when they are filling out their form, the crash report form using their software, that it's going through a process that is getting that data to the state, getting that data to the analysts who need it. So really seeing how can we help to improve this process to ensure that the hard work that's being done by our partners is getting to the folks that are trying to use it. So the idea really, if we can improve some of this input, whether that is different software, just changes the way that it works so that it's all being collected properly after they enter it, will require less time needed to clean it, process it when it gets to the different stages, whether that's at their agency, Department of Revenue, Department of Transportation, and so on. Ultimately, with the goal of getting this higher quality crash data available sooner for all of the reasons why the stakeholders in this group want to use it. two of the main initiatives that we've been working on here at DRCOG have been really to survey some of our law enforcement agencies across the state, and then looking into researching other best practices at other states, including DOTs and their departments of revenue. We sent out a survey in late August, early September, through the Association of Law Enforcement Records Technicians, Supervisors, and Managers, which I think we got a really pretty cool response from, and a pretty diverse response across the states. Goal of this is really to try to learn what we can about whether they're submitting electronically or manually, what kind of costs it takes to maintain their systems, whether it's for their records management system or a separate system, and how they connect. Building connections with these agencies so we can continue to learn from one another and work with each other. And then with the research, again, just trying to learn best practices, identify what sort of obstacles there may have been for other states to implement different systems, and see what sort of paths we may have as a state. With our survey, we had 32 unique responses, or a couple multiple from different agencies, so not counting those as separate ones. 23 of those were fully complete, and 9 were incomplete, but still were useful. And again, just highlighting the organization that helped us with this survey. Combined with the engagement that we've already done over the last couple of years, we do have information from 45 agencies across the state, including the Colorado State Patrol. Varying levels of detail among what we have, but for a lot of these, we have things such as what their records management system is, if they're submitting electronically, how many, maybe for some, like how many people are doing data cleaning on the back end. And so in the Denver region, we've connected with about 27 agencies, and we've had responses from about 18 outside of the region. One thing that we've learned from the survey is that almost all of them are reporting electronically already. But even some that are getting that data electronically still have some manual input on the back ends to get through, to get into their records management system. There's been at least 8 different softwares that have been shared with us, that some are full records management system with crash reporting built into it, and some are using a separate application that either connects with their system or just sends that data to the Department of Revenue. We asked about some of the costs. Some of these are nominally free. They're providing the service without charging a dollar fee. But there may be some terms and conditions that we should be aware of for why that software is free, as well as some we've heard there may not be as simple as the crash reporting costs $10,000 or $20,000 because it's part of the main system they have. So it's kind of part and parcel with that. So it's hard to say it's costing agency X so many dollars because it's already integrated in their system. Some of these things are going to require a little more follow-up. So we're going to be spending some time with that, trying to get some information. And then one last thing to share on the survey is we did ask if about how many FTE were being used at agencies to do cleaning on the back end. And some of them reported none, some of the smaller agencies, but some did report a couple of folks that are basically doing full-time cleaning of the data. And there's folks at CDOT and DOR doing full-time cleaning of the data. So again, how can we work to see if there are alternative systems that could lead to less of a manual data cleaning on the back? Again, our next steps with this is really to follow up with some of these respondents. Again, wanted to understand a little bit more about the relationships between the systems that they use, especially when they're not fully integrated. Learning more about the pros and cons of each system, because certainly there are reasons why agencies are using whatever system they have, and I wanted to understand those, and couldn't get to that in the survey that we had sent out to the level of detail we wanted. We want to keep still engaging with law enforcement. I think we had a really great response. We have really great relationships, but wanting to just get out there a little more, and even some of the agencies that maybe didn't fill it out, but we know a couple folks have. I've reached out to some of them already to get some more detail, and we'll be continuing with that. And then an ask I will have of some of our other metropolitan planning organization partners is to see if they would be willing to share it out in their region. Because again, the quality of the state crash data is a statewide issue. And so even though we're kind of taking the lead with the survey, we want to see if we can get that information from other areas of the state as well. And the last thing I want to share before turning over to our first presentation is, and a lead into it, is some of this preliminary peer state research we've been doing. We have a workbook where we're tracking some of what we've learned from other states, and it's kind of interesting. We've been learning about how, well, some other states, I don't know about most other states, but some of the states that we've either done preliminary research or talked to do have a software solution that the state government provides, whether they've created it or they've contracted it out, they've bought it. It is something that CDOT or the state is currently working on, but again, trying to see what we can learn from these others to make either that system the best it can be, or if there's something else that is already out there that could be a good model to base off of or adopt. We've had some recent conversations with a few other DOTs and with at least one state police. Iowa Department of Transportation, I'm actually going to turn it over to them next. They'll be giving us some information about what's called the national model and traffic and criminal and TRACS, which is the traffic and criminal software that they have developed and is used by multiple states, a territory, and province in Canada for crash reporting, e-citation, and other usages. But we also want to we're going to have some more conversations with others. We have something scheduled with Texas DOT, a follow-up with New Jersey, moving from their state police to their DOT to learn more about the process to implement their system. So more to come. There's definitely a lot of great examples out there, and we're just kind of, again, trying to see what we can bring to the conversation from other states and from learning from our state partners. So with that, I will have some time for questions at the end, and I do want to make myself available for any questions people may have, but we do have several guests, and so I would like to turn it over to Josh Halterman of the Iowa Department of Transportation. And then at the end, if anyone has questions about what I've just shared, please share that with me, or please reach out to me or stay on the line, and happy to talk about that. But with that, I will turn it over to Josh.
Okay. As Eric mentioned, I am with the Iowa Department of Transportation. We do have a developed solution that we have here in the state, and that's one of the things that we're going to talk to you about today. And if you have any questions, please let us know, and we'll get those answered as soon as we possibly can. So my name is Josh Halterman. I've been with the Department of Transportation for 18 years now. I started off with our track support side, coming out of law enforcement. So I was with a law enforcement agency in the Des Moines metro area for 13 years. I moved into our support role at the Department of Transportation here, supporting the TRACS application, and eventually moved into the program management side. So I have the experience from the roadside data collection all the way to the support of the application and now the program management side. With me, I have Tad Geis. Tad, would you like to introduce yourself?
Certainly. Thanks, Josh. My name is Tad Geis. I am the president of Technology Enterprise Group, and we are the development arm of the National Model Program. We actually develop the TRACS software, which is the traffic and criminal software, which is a data collection, RMS, and reporting software, and also the mock software available through the National Model, which is the CAD system, the mapping, and the AVS application side of the National Model. We've been doing this for the National Model for the past 26 years, and we're really excited to show you what we've got today.
Thanks, Ted. Okay, so Tad mentioned the national model. That's what we're here to talk about. And so what is the national model? The national model is a consortium of states that have gotten together to develop software for the statewide application of data collection and management technology to improve highway safety. We have been leading the national model since 2001. I am the current program manager. The national model currently consists of 14 states, 1 U.S. territory, and 1 province that all utilize TRACS, and some of them also license the mock software from us as well to enable them to collect data and share that data in an efficient, accurate, and timely manner. So we do use a shared common software that does allow for that establishment of best practices, as well as being able to keep that software cost very low, being that we are working with so many other states. So who is the national model? You will see that the national model is in everywhere from Alaska to Florida, the U.S. Virgin Islands, New York, Arizona. One of our newest states is the state of Washington. They are currently deploying to their state police with a crash citation and a warning citation, and we are helping them build additional forms as we move forward. So that is who our current membership is. That is at least at a minimum licensing TRACS from the national model from the Iowa DOT. Ted, do you want to cover your TEG?
Sure, just real quick. TEG is a privately held corporation. We are based out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. We've been doing this since 1999, and our sole expertise is creating public safety software. We are a partner with the national model, as I said before, for the last 26 years, and hopefully 26 more to come. Thank you.
All right. So we're going to talk about TRACS. TRACS stands for Traffic and Criminal Software, as a nationally recognized public safety software that provides a total data collection and records management solution for public safety agencies of all sizes. We have one-man departments here in the state of Iowa that utilize TRACS, and we have very large departments like Miami Police Department, the Arizona State Police, Minnesota State Police. We have large statewide implementations throughout the nation. TRACS is currently being used by thousands of public safety agencies and by tens of thousands of law enforcement officers across the nation. And not only for crash reporting, we also do e-ticketing, commercial vehicle inspections. If it's a piece of law enforcement paperwork that is currently out there, it can probably be built as a form within the TRACS application. So I'm going to go through these fairly quick. There's quite a bit of information here, and I want to get to the demo and use my time primarily on the demo. But TRACS is a forms-based data collection and records management system. Again, we are not limited to just crash. We do crash citations, commercial vehicle inspections, incident reports, and many other forms. Some of our states have upwards of 60 forms that they have built into their TRACS deployments. We do interface with barcode scanners. I'll show you that here in just a moment. Signature tabs, tablets, GPS. We have lots of external data gathering capabilities where we can pull information from other systems. We do have a geolocation tool that I will show that actually allows us to geolocate all of our forms for later data analysis. Data transmission, of course, we need to be able to not only collect the data, but then also submit the data to endpoints. And we are currently working on a completely rewritten version of TRACS in a web application that will not be limited to Windows operating systems. So at some point in the very near future, we will have a completely web-based version of TRACS. We do have records management system capabilities within TRACS as well, including case management, master index, flags, confidentiality, a lot of those things that you would see in an off-the-shelf records management system. The software development kit is what allows a state to completely customize TRACS for their needs, building Colorado's crash report within the TRACS application. We know that Iowa's crash report is probably very different than Colorado's, so we allow states to completely customize TRACS for their needs, including business approvals, business rules, data flow. All of that is capable of being built with the SDK. So what does it cost? Sounds great, right? Currently, the TRAX license for a statewide license is $110,000 a year. There can be costs depending on how you want to develop your forms within the TRAX application. Again, we license the SDK to your state. If you've got developers that want to use or can use the SDK to develop your forms within the application, that is perfectly fine. You can also contract with vendors like TEG to develop your forms for you. Licenses include installing the software within any public safety agency. There is no limit on the number of devices. There is no limit on the number of users. There's no limit on the number of installs. There's not even a limit on the number of forms that you can build within the application, which is great. And for that $110,000 a year. Okay. Questions so far? I'd be happy to answer those while I bring up TRAX and show you that. If not, we'll just continue on with the demo. I have one hand up. Jason, go ahead.
Thank you. And I may have missed it, so I apologize. Does TRAX easily interface with other RMS systems so they're not having to do dual entry?
Yes. So as part of the transmission capabilities within TRAX, when we transmit a crash report, let's say to the Department of Revenue, we have the ability to generate an additional XML file for the records management system that the records management system then can ingest and import into the records management system, preventing that dual entry.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, we're going to go ahead and start with our demo here. This is kind of surrounding crashes. So that's what we're, yeah, go ahead.
If I can interrupt, I do one more hand up, I think.
Sure. I must have missed that one.
It was me.
No worries.
So I was just wondering, since you guys have the barcode scanner, do you guys also have the VIN decoder?
We have a VIN check that just makes sure that the VIN is formatted correctly.
Okay.
At our most recent National Model Steering Committee meeting, which was hosted in August out in Chicago, that is actually one of the things that we did discuss is interfacing TRAX with NHTSA's VIN decoder.
Yeah, I'm trying to do the same thing with my crash software, and it seems you guys are already a little bit ahead of me here.
Yeah, that's something that we are very interested in doing and adding to that baseline version of TRAX, which then a state can implement into their what we refer to as a TRAX pack. Okay, I'm going to go on ahead and get started with the demo here. This is TRAX. This is the main look and feel of TRAX that an officer would see when they're filling out a form. Off to the left, we have our form navigation that would allow us to start in the report anywhere we wanted to. If the very first thing I wanted to start doing is working on the diagram, I could click on that. It's going to take me to the diagram tool. Most of our officers are starting at the top and filling it out top to bottom, which is perfectly acceptable. But you can jump around in the form pretty easy with the form navigation. Just above the form viewer, and the form viewer is where we actually get to see what data we have plugged into the form, we have our data entry bar. The data entry bar is where we plug in all of our data. The very first field on Iowa's crash report is what's your case number? What is your form? And it's just a free text field that you can type in. You can hit the next button, you can hit the tab key, or you can hit the enter key to move on to the next field. And we get to our next field. You will see that our data entry bar at the top changed. It changed from a free text field to a single pick list. I now can select one of these items from the pick list, either by hitting the number that's in front of the option to select it, or actually clicking on the option within the data entry bar. I'm going to go ahead and select all other accidents. That's our reportable accidents that do get transmitted to the Department of Transportation, and I'm going to move on. Again, you'll see our data bar again changes. That changing of the data bar is how we control what data is being put into TRAX in the format that we want it to be entered into TRAX. You'll notice also that off to the left, there is field help, actually telling the officer what we're expecting to be entered into this field. If they have a question, they can very easily go to that field help and look to see what we are looking for, making their jobs hopefully a little bit easier. Okay, so again, I'm going to continue on. I'm definitely not going to fill out every field on this report. Here's another different type of data entry bar. Tad, I think we have up around 60, 65 different data bars that allow us to control that data entry. Is that correct?
About 65, and we do have several of the muck data bars as well.
Excellent, thank you. So again, data, we do have calendar features. If it's, there's short keys. So if I want today's date, all I have to do is hit the D key on my keyboard. It's going to pull the date from the computer and populate it in there. Same thing with the time. Again, we've tried to make this as easy and quick as possible for a trooper or an officer to enter the crash. Now, behind tracks, part of that SDK, it allows you to build validation rules for your reports. So as I go through and fill this report out, we can actually control what's available in other pick lists. If I skip my county and I go directly to the accident where the city occurred, it's going to give me a list of every city in the state. If I fill in the county and move on, my list is now narrowed to only the cities that are in that particular county. So I can select that and move on. So we have the ability to, again, assist the officer through validation rules in only providing them with options that make sense from other areas of the crash report that they have already filled in. Another thing that we can do with validation rules is we can actually prevent an officer from filling in data that we don't want to fill in. In Iowa, our wildlife crashes, there's only certain information that what we want filled in. So if you select wildlife short form accident, we actually disable portions of the report and we auto-populate portions of the report based off of that selection of animal and roadway. So they've struck an animal, they've struck a deer, we actually populate that in for the officer and we gray out all of these other fields that we are not expecting, preventing the officer from having to fill in extra data. Okay, that's all done through that SDK. It's all done through the validations and the rules builder. So again, if I select all our other accidents, you'll see that those fields that were grayed out, disabled, are now filled in. Now, our rule is not 100% here. It didn't go through and clear out that option, but I, as an officer, can go ahead and do that. We had a hand up. Go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, I was just wondering, is it like for the end user, like let's say like someone who is interfacing but isn't necessarily a reporting officer or someone who's maintaining this, would they be able to build in extra validations as their data set requires?
Yeah, we are continually identifying deficiencies in our crash data, and we are always adding new validations. And I don't want to offend anybody, but here in the state of Iowa, we call that trooper proofing.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's just so helpful to be able to like put up the guardrails and then be
yes,
able to customize them and then have exceptions as the system needs it.
We just did I think we put an additional 57 validation rules into our crash report last year. Based off of some of the data that we were seeing coming in, we identified those deficiencies. We put out a new release of tracks to fix those issues. So absolutely. Okay, so I'm going to go again. I'm going to kind of skip around now because I want to talk about some of the other things. We've talked about how we can do data entry as far as the data bars. This next data bar is our location tool. This is how we actually put those X and Y coordinates to the report so that we can go back and create pin maps. We can do data analysis of our crash data later. Because we are also doing citations and charging documents and a lot of other reports within tracks in Iowa, we can actually compare our citation data against our crash data. So if we see an area of a county where we see a lot of serious injury crashes based off of the data that we're collecting in tracks, we can compare that to where we're writing our citations in the county. We can go back and say, okay, let's do some directed enforcement. Let's maybe all the crashes are in the northwest part of the county, but we're doing a lot of our enforcement activities in the opposite side of the county. We can tell our officers, let's move some of our enforcement activities to that area where we're having a high crash volume. So, and that's all using this location tool and applying those X and Y coordinates to our forms. So let's say my crash did occur on Meredith Drive here. The location tool does interface with GPS. I just don't have GPS on my laptop here. If I did, it would automatically locate me where my patrol car was at. But in this case, I don't. So I need to actually click on the map itself and tell tracks where the crash occurred. We do have measuring. So if I wanted to measure from an intersection, I can put my cursor in the middle of that intersection, click measure, and then I can start moving out and say, this actually occurred on Meredith Drive. I'm going to click the locate button. It's going to capture those X and Y coordinates. It's going to pull information from our GIS shape files that are sitting on the laptop, and it's going to populate into the literal description of the crash. So our on Meredith Drive measuring 408 feet from 72nd Street. Now, as an officer, I can go in and I can modify that description. I cannot modify the X and Y coordinates without clicking the locate button and relocating the crash. So again, we really trying to control and prevent accidental editing of some of this data. So that's the location tool. I'm going to go down to, I'm going to skip past some of this other information, and I'm going to get into the actual unit information and talk a little bit of how we can capture data from other sources. So again, I do have a barcode imager here with me. I'm going to go ahead and scan the barcode on the back of a driver's license that I have sitting here with me. It's one of our sample driver's licenses, and it went ahead and put that into the pick list. I can select that PIP from the pick list and move on to the next field, and you will see it dropped all that information into the report. I can go back and edit it if I need to. Let's say my driver's license is out of date and that is no longer a good address. I can go in and change that if I need to. The other thing I can do is on the vehicle side, I can do the same thing. I can go in and I can scan the barcode on my registration so that I can again select that from the list, and it's going to populate everything into the vehicle section of the report. There's a few things that aren't in there. Evidently, my barcode does not have the color in it, so I would have to go back and fill that in. Okay. But we do a really good job of that. That is one way of collecting information. This is the owner information, the registered owner information. It's actually my registration, so I could select myself as the registered owner, and again, it would populate all that information in. In this case, I'm actually going to show the master index, or the ability to look up other data that's already within tracks. So maybe the registered owner has the last name of Miller. I can search all of the data that I have within tracks, find my Miller that is actually the registered owner, select them from the list, apply it to the form, and there is Braden Miller. And that is all based off of information that you've captured within your tracks forms. So that goes to the records management piece of tracks and that ability to utilize master index records from other forms that we have already filled in. And again, we're doing citations, complaint and affidavits. We're quite a few forms. I think we have 27 forms in our Iowa Tracks Pack to date. Go ahead. I have a question.
So for this data where you can like search for a separate person, that's all housed at DOR, but it would be something that me at CDOT would also find valuable.
Sure. So that data actually came from the tracks database based off of maybe a citation that was filled out in the past, an incident report that was filled out in the past, a citation, an arrest. Again, depending on what other forms were built within your tracks pack, that data still resides within the tracks database. So this could be this person's, if I go back up to the driver, maybe this is actually this person's 5th accident within the last year.
Sure.
They don't have their driver's license on them any longer because it's been confiscated. It's been revoked because of all the accidents that they've had. Their data is still available within the tracks database to be pulled and applied to other forms.
But it's not directly linked to where that data is stored.
It's going through web services from the laptop to the tracks database. It's not going to Department of Revenue. It's not going to the Department of Transportation. Okay. It is actually pulling it right from the tracks database.
Okay.
Okay. I think we had another question there.
Yeah, I was, this is Dwayne Liller with State Patrol. I've actually got two questions for you. So to piggyback on Alyssa's question, rather than being populated just by like ongoing tickets being written, is it possible to tie this to a larger database like the DOR's database so that officers can immediately pull up a name and have whatever's in that database available to them?
Absolutely. In fact, as long as that database is available and accessible, you can build interfaces to pull from those databases. In Iowa, we have actually published a standard that allows our records management and CAD vendors to share NCIC returns with tracks. So the officer in the car, they run a driver's license check or a registration check. That data is saved off to a location on the laptop from the mobile data terminal software, the CAD software, that tracks can then go pick up and bring in and pull in, just like I did with my barcode imager.
Gotcha.
So yeah, there's lots of capabilities there.
The second question has to do with the location tool. It looked to me like you were using an Esri base map. Is that true?
That is correct. We are using Esri shape files basically we update them to a folder within the Trax file structure, and we are using Esri shape files. So when we click that locate button, we are capturing that description. We are capturing those X and Y coordinates. There's actually hidden fields on the report where we are capturing additional information on the form.
Okay, so when troopers are deep in a valley in the mountains and they don't have a good cell signal, are they still able to use this because the base map is downloaded on their terminal?
That is correct. Yes. In fact, Trax will continue to work. Trax grew up in an offline world, and we always plan for those offline occasions. We have the state of Alaska where a trooper is throwing their laptop onto a snowmobile or an airplane and going off into the wilderness to do reports where they don't have connectivity and are not going to have connectivity. So absolutely, Trax will work in an offline world. When that connectivity is reestablished is when those forms will then upload back to the database. Now, the only problem with that offline world is you lose out on some of that master index searching because it does try to reach out through web services to go to the Trax database and pull that. In that case, without the connectivity, you're not going to be able to pull those master index records. But as far as the location tool, yes.
Very good. I'm done here. Eric, over to you.
Eric, you've got your hand up.
Right.
I've got about 5 minutes left, correct?
I'm going to actually give it a little more since we've kind of been doing the questions during, but I just wanted to flag there is a question in the chat from our local governments relating to the location tool. Can it also show an aerial map or location?
You can. In fact, you can bring a Google API key into, and this is where I may have to have Tad's help. You can bring an API Google key into your TraxPack implementation to allow you to access Google aerial photos, if you so desire.
That is correct, Josh.
Thank you.
Okay.
So
Cool.
yeah,
All
we're just not spending the extra money to pay Google to access those directly from the Trax application. I can change to an OpenStreetMap if I want to, but essentially the data I'm pulling when I click on that OpenStreetMap, it's still pulling from the shape files in the background.
Okay. Okay. I'm going to go to Alyssa now, but then next time I raise my hand will be your 5 minutes.
Okay. Excellent. So
with the location, like the GPS coordinate, and I saw how it dealt with like the offset and things like that. How does it handle like a highway off ramp or something like that?
Sure. Let me get back to my Esri shape files here. So this is, again, we're looking at our Esri shape files that we've pushed out from the Department of Transportation. So this is the interstate going through Des Moines, and there is the off ramp. It is it actually says ramp in the data. So when I hit locate, it's ramp I-80 west to 86th Street north.
That's so beautiful.
Excellent. So yeah, there are some other things I want to cover here. we have the ability to add additional units. My crash report here currently only has one. Real easy to do. I can go over here, add a group, I can add additional unit, and it will populate over into the form navigation for me to start filling out. Our crash report, I believe, is currently set to 99 units that we can add. And you'll see that the second unit has popped in there, and now I can start going in and filling that out. But again, that's something that you can control at the development level. We had another question, I believe, that popped up there.
I think that might be me.
Go ahead.
Sort of two questions. How do you guys have any way? We have an issue up in the North Metro area where boundary signals, there's a lot of different signals that might be owned by or touching 2 or 3 organizations, and those get coded as all kinds of different things every time. How does your application have a workaround for that?
I guess I'm not exactly sure what you're asking. Again, I've skipped over a lot of the report itself because it's just a lot of data entry. So as far as coding that, as far as creating how you want to code that, that's entirely up to you. You're building the report for your needs to match your Colorado crash report. Does that answer your question? I'm not sure.
I can hop in here. Michelle, we do have geodatabases and maps for things like engineering regions and MPOs and things like that. And so we can reference those databases with the GPS coordinates. It's something that I'm working on slowly.
Sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Well,
I think what.
Go ahead.
We can skip it. I think what happens is no jurisdiction then really has a full picture of the full crash picture, because each part will get coded to like cities or unincorporated counties. So that's just something we've been struggling with, is how to get for those boundary signals, how to get, if I working for Lafayette pull Lafayette collisions, I only get a quarter, and Erie will only get a quarter, and the county will get half. And so it's an issue with getting full collision picture at a single intersection. It's been a struggle. That's just... Sure.
And I'll speak to the way tracks. One of the ways that we can do that with tracks, I've put in my report here that it's happened in Greene County within the city limits. When I do my validation of the report at the end, it's going to look and it's going to see that I've located it not in Greene County and not in Jefferson. It's going to tell me that I've located it somewhere other than the city or the city that I've put in the report. So you can build those types of validation rules to make sure that, hey, you've located it here, but that's this city limits. If that helps. I do want to get to the diagram tool and the narrative and the validation processes real quick, because I know we're going to be running out of time, and I do want to show how we can add a citation to our crash report form. So I want to do this fairly quickly. This is the built-in diagram tool that comes with Tracks as a part of Tracks. If I want to start adding, it's a real quick, let's add a north indicator here. Let's put our intersection in here. Let's actually go and we'll throw a roundabout in here. Drop in some vehicles. There's a bicycle. There's an overturned car. We can do signs. We can do objects. There's a lot of different pre-built things in this. And this is the one that actually comes with Tracks as part of the license. So if we have a horse, we can do that. We also have the ability to interface with other commercially available diagram tools. So I'll go back up to my diagram here. We do work with, oops, I should not have clicked that. We do work with Visio, Easy Street Draw, Quick Scene, TAD, our most recent one that we've interfaced with, I believe, is Faro Zone. Is that correct?
Great, Crash Zone, yeah. Right.
Crash Zone, okay. Quick Scene, there's quite a few different commercially available diagram tools that we also do work with. The other thing that we can do is we can actually hand draw a diagram and import it in as a picture if we need to. So there's lots of different options when it comes to diagrams. I threw that one together in about 30 seconds. It's probably nowhere near actually what occurred, but you can do that type of quick down and dirty diagram with what comes with tracks. We do include narrative groups. So this is just another data bar where we can go through and start typing our narrative. You will see that spell checking does work. It works on the fly as you're going, just like any other spell checker would as well. And then there's a lot of other parts to the report, but I want to show real quick how we can add other forms. So I've got my crash report. Hopefully I've clicked the validate button. It's run through all the validations. It's made sure that my data is accurate, complete, and correct. And you will see here that I'm going to come up with a bunch of different validation errors that I would need to fix before it can be transmitted to the state repository. And it's just a matter of double clicking on one of those errors. It will take me to that portion of the report that is a problem. I select my selection, move on, and then that validation error goes away. And again, I left a lot of this report blank, so there's going to be a lot of validation problems. But I do want to quickly show that we can now do a citation based off of the data that we've already collected in the crash report. We can do a warning. We can do an arrest report. Again, any one of the other forms that you have developed within your tracks pack can be built as a form within tracks. As I start to fill out my citation, you will see that all of the information that I had available to me in the crash report is immediately available for me to use within my citation. I can have my citation filled out in just a few minutes based off of that. And again, one of the main goals with all of this is how quickly can we get this paperwork done? How quickly can we get the road cleared? How quickly can we get our officers to a safe location? And that's one of the main focuses of what we're doing here. So, and I'm not going to go through and fill out that entire citation, but I very easily could. Question?
Whoops. So we, in addition to the crash form and the citation, which I'm already over the moon about, I'm curious, so we have like an early notification system for when like a serious injury or a fatal crash occurs that contains just like super basic information. Would we be able to build a custom form for that would integrate into this?
Sure.
So like you could use the
Absolutely.
blotter to like populate the crash form and then use the crash form to populate the citation.
Yeah, and we do something in tracks called auto populate. We can actually click the auto populate button and auto populate data from one form to another form. So we've got our crash report that may be mostly complete, but we need to fill in this other report that you just mentioned. We can have an auto populate rule that does that, and then that form gets transmitted to that early notification system. Definitely something that could be done. Okay, Eric, I know we're getting towards the end of my time here. If you have, go ahead.
I think just have one last question
Sure.
from Catherine. So I think that we can wrap up.
Okay.
Yeah, I was just wondering, I believe you mentioned that the state of Washington is the most recent tracks member. I was wondering how long it took to set up their forms and make all the connections and add in the validations, do the testing and all that before full deployment from the time that like the contract was executed.
Sure. So we are, we've contracted, Washington is contracted with the state of Iowa for the license and the initial development of their forms. We have subcontracted that work out to Tad and Technology Enterprise Group and his company to actually do the form development, the customization, and then the initial deployment. Tad, I'll let you talk about the kind of that process. If you're going to move that route, and I would highly recommend doing that if you were going to move forward with tracks or some other thing like that, is have the experts build your first set of forms, and then eventually turn that forms development over to your internal IT to continue to build out and continue to develop. So Ted, you want to talk about how the Washington project is going right now?
We're getting great feedback. They are rolling out to the Washington State Patrol right now as we speak. And beginning next year, they're going to roll out to their other 320 some local agencies within the state. Not only are we doing crashes, but we're doing citations, we're doing warnings, we're doing complaints, we're doing tow and impound. I think there's a total of 8 or 9 different forms that we're actually building for them. As for a time frame, From the time we started, from the time the contract got signed and the ink dried to now has been about a year, I think.
Yeah, it's been real
But there
close.
have been lots of challenges because Washington is going from an old homegrown system where they have nobody who's familiar with it. So we had to do a lot of requirements gathering. Well, our old system did this. How did it do that? Well, we're not sure. So we had to do a lot of learning from them. So the lion's share of the work was done from the requirements gathering. We've been with states that have requirements gathering already taken care of, and we've just been able to go in and build their forms for them. And it's taken less than 3 months to do. So it really just depends on how prepared the project is for those requirements.
Okay. All right. Thank you for that. There's one last question from Alyssa. I know Dwayne just raised his hand, but we do have two other groups to get to today. I love the engagement that we've had. But if we just address this one question from Alyssa, does this data stay within tracks, or does the data get transferred to other entities, for example, like Carfax for police?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the data can go wherever you want it to go. In Iowa, we're currently transmitting our crash report from the local law enforcement agencies, from tracks, the local agencies, to the Department of Transportation. At some agencies, they do want to use Carfax for police. So we've built rules, we've built transmission capabilities to transmit that, an XML file out for Carfax. Again, as I said earlier, we've also built transmission capabilities to provide an XML file to the local records management system. We have built transmission instructions within tracks to send the data directly to NHTSA, to populate NHTSA databases. All capabilities of tracks to be able to get that data to other endpoints, and we have lots of those available.
Okay, awesome.
Okay. We do have, I'll just plug this real quick. We do have our website, nationalmodel.us. My contact information is on there, or should be on there. If not, I did plug it into the chat for this meeting, and I appreciate everybody's time listening to us talk about what we're doing here and in many other states.
All right. Thanks again, Josh and Tad. Really appreciate you sharing your expertise, and again, showing a model of what is out there, what other options are, and I'm really just appreciate the wealth of knowledge you brought. If anyone has questions, yeah, just please reach out directly to Josh or Tad, or if you want me to ask me to send it, that's fine too. So just I'm happy to also communicate any questions you have. But next, I want to show or introduce our next guest, and so we have Ben Ramsey from the City and County of Broomfield, and Bryce Hammerton, also from the City County of Broomfield, and they are going to talk about their new crash data dashboard and some of the work that they have done to coordinate between traffic engineering and their law enforcement agency. So Ben, take it away.
Thanks, Eric. I am Ben Ramsey, GIS analyst for the City and County of Broomfield, and I've been on the traffic team with Broomfield for 4 years, and then 1 year as a GIS analyst. And one of the projects I've been working on is how can we visualize and analyze current crash data at Broomfield. And so as a solution to that, we developed a new traffic crash data dashboard for analysis. So starting with the design of the dashboard, it's modeled after DRCOG's existing dashboard for ease of use and collaboration, but the data is sourced directly from Broomfield's police database, which is New World. Some of the differences from DRCOG's dashboard include that scooters and motorcycles as vehicle types are visualized in the map, and it's possible to select hit and run crashes, as well as choose the direction of travel for the vehicle prior to the crash. DUI crashes are also broken down separately into crashes involving alcohol and drugs. And the dashboard contains whole years of data from 2022 through 2024. And the reason is because 2022 is the first year that the DR 3447 report was available. And so we wanted to stay consistent with that data schema because the underlying data for the dashboard is also supporting a data editing workflow. So moving into a brief demo of this dashboard. The dashboard is laid out with category selectors on the left-hand side, including the additional fields of alcohol and drugs suspected, as well as direction of travel and hit and run crashes. There are statistics at the top indicating the total number of crashes and the total number of crashes involving fatalities and total number of crashes involving serious injuries. And this is distinct from the number of fatalities per crash and the number of serious injuries per crash, because at Broomfield, we're analyzing overall crashes with these statistics. In the map view, there's a pop-up showing various fields from the tabs in the dashboard. And one thing I wanted to point out here is that the number of injuries is just including the number of overall injuries per crash and not breaking them down by injury severity. And this is a limitation of the current data that we have in our GIS. And so that's something we're looking to add in the next iteration. On the right is a serial chart with the top intersections by number of crashes. And then I'll go ahead and filter through the tabs here. So the time tab breaks down crashes by the accident date field. And the environmental conditions tab shows statistics such as road conditions and road descriptions. The crash characteristics tab shows crash types and driver actions, as well as specific statistics for motorcycle crash severity. The vulnerable road users tab shows data specifically for vulnerable road users. I'm going to go ahead and refresh so that the statistics reload. And then the last tab shows general information about the dashboard and how to use it. So pivoting back to the presentation, the main reason that we built this dashboard is because we're using it for Broomfield's internal crash analysis. It's possible for staff and the public to analyze crash data without using specialized GIS software. So this is a huge benefit for individuals that don't have access to ArcGIS Pro to just be able to quickly look at Broomfield's up-to-date crash data using the pre-built selections and category selectors. In addition, the underlying data for the dashboard supports data editing so that traffic staff can edit the data for internal analysis purposes. And then this dashboard, the data can be reflected in the dashboard. And the dashboard on a high level also provides transparency to the public on where the crashes are occurring in Broomfield. I'd like to invite our traffic engineer, Bryce Hammerton, to discuss the crash analysis process at Broomfield. Bryce?
Yeah, thank you, Ben. As Ben mentioned, my name is Bryce Hammerton, Broomfield's traffic engineer. And I would say we're lucky to have somebody that was previously on our traffic team with GIS now, who really cares about traffic and wants to help us create this dashboard. So thank you for all your work on that, Ben. And I'm mainly going to talk about the police training that we did and our work with law enforcement. But before we do that, I just wanted to address one question that may come up on the crash analysis. The safety performance functions are not included within this dashboard. It is something that we do use, but we apply those after we download the data, and that is all done outside of the GIS. So that is not included in this dashboard. So now just moving on to the police training. We hired Next Phase Engineering to work on cleaning 3 years of our crash data. So what that was, it involved reading all the narratives and revising the crash fields to be accurate. And while they were going through that process, they identified specific fields that were reported inconsistently. So this is not necessarily not filling out the fields,
but identifying some fields that could be filled out in a more consistent fashion. And the idea was to conduct a training with the police department to try and make the data better from the jump, as opposed to going back and scrubbing all the data after the fact. One advantage to that is the data that the police directly input gets reported to CDOT. Any edits that we make after the fact, while it may show up in our GIS and the dashboard, they would not be directly reported to CDOT. So it was one lesson learned that we had from this was it was really important to get the traffic sergeants on board. They were able to give us a nice introduction and let their officers know the importance of traffic safety and good data, and how that is useful for traffic engineers. I think hearing it from their direct supervising sergeants was really useful to get that message across. We didn't want the training to be cumbersome, so we kept it short, focusing on a few specific fields that we thought would be really useful to us when we're filtering data. So some of those fields were public versus private. A lot of the crashes that we saw were checked private when they should have been public. Location data, a lot of times crashes were being coded at the closest intersection, when really in traffic engineering, we are concerned with which intersection was the crash associated with. So the classic example would be like a really long queue at a particular intersection. There seemed to be some confusion on approach turns and overtaking turns, so we discussed that and clarified that. The direction of travel was often used for the direction after the crash and not before the crash. And we also tried to stress the importance of completing. Sorry? Oh, okay, so we also tried to stress the importance of completing the pad and bike information. Oftentimes we found that that box was not checked, but being able to understand in more detail what happens in those pad and bike crashes is important for traffic engineers. And one challenge that we did have when we were going through that training process, we wanted to do it all in person in the first year, at least, but it was difficult to schedule around all the different shifts. So we wound up having to do like 4 different training sessions, and attendance was, there may not have been, I think there was pretty good attendance, but it may not have been perfect. So going forward, we're going to do a recording in our online learning system, and that way the sergeants can directly assign that to each officer. And with that, I'll pass it back to Ben.
Thanks, Bryce. So moving on to background of how this dashboard and the GIS schema came together. As I mentioned at the beginning, we wanted to visualize traffic crashes in GIS. And so what we did is we started with a spreadsheet of crash data with no spatial representation, and then pulled the crash reports from New World into a GIS feature layer as part of the feature service. The GIS schema was standardized to support not only the crash data dashboard, but also a data editing workflow. And so on the right is a link to the public facing traffic crashes feature service. That's also the same layer that's used for internal analysis, except that it contains additional fields not visible to the public, such as the crash number and information on age and other personal identifying information. And the main benefit with the feature layer is that the latest data is available as soon as the crash report comes in. And so there are 2025 crashes available in the traffic crash layer. It's just that we chose to limit the data available to whole years in the dashboard. So that's why it's 2024. And then as soon as all the 2025 data is available at the end of the year, we'll make that available in the dashboard as well. Diving into the data schema a little bit more, we pulled information from another number of non-spatial tables to construct the fields that we wanted to show in open data. And then the other component was a feature layer view to be able to show the crash data in a more robust format, because it applies a number of filters, such as just including crashes in Broomfield, filtering out crashes on private property, and then also applying that date filter. So just filtering for crashes from 2022 through 2024. And again, that robustness with the feature layer view prevents having to reconfigure the widgets if the data schema changes. So for example, if the number of fields change or the fields are reordered or a field name changes, the dashboard won't be impacted. And then on the right is a flow chart of our process from the police report and then having that entered into the database all the way through all of the steps in GIS and then the publishing steps with the data becoming publicly available and then the analysis tool with the crash data dashboard. Moving on to geocoding. Bryce touched on this, but since the majority of crashes occur at intersections, we geocoded crashes to the nearest intersection because we want to include all intersection related crashes. And so this does bring up scenarios where there are traffic situations such as queues that might result in a rear end crash, where the crash is actually, for example, associated with 120th and Sheridan, but it's snapped to 120th and Chase because it's spatially closer there. So we're just looking at the best way that we can classify intersection related crashes, and we'll conduct an annual review of how we can best display this information. What were some of the challenges that we faced with putting this project together? We needed to extract the correct fields from SQL Server database tables because there was a number of non-spatial tables that we combined to create the final fields that are available in open data. And then the second step was modifying the database to support a data editing workflow by traffic staff. And so what was done is we added domains for all the fields that were not unique identifiers. So for example, crash number or GIS ID or global ID, we added domains for every other field. And so on the right is an example with contributing factor field. And these coded values are taken directly from the police DR 3447 report so that traffic staff can go through a record and then correct any of that information if it's inconsistent with the narrative. Finally, it was also a challenge to integrate the web map and the dashboard, because the dashboard and the web map can't directly talk to each other unless there's a unique field for each type of data that we wanted to show. And so this really comes into play with the priority fields, which are mode of travel and injury severity, because they're selecting from a priority scheme, with mode of travel being the most vulnerable road user, the pedestrian, and then the least vulnerable road user as a motor vehicle, and all the values in between. And then same thing with injury severity, with fatality being the highest priority and then no apparent injury being the least priority. So having all of that pre-calculated information available in open data was key to being able to construct the dashboard. Looking towards future improvements, we'd like to look into automating the data cleaning process. So this could involve, on the internal side, having AI run through the narrative and then correct any of the other fields in the GIS database if there's an inconsistency there. We're looking to continually refine the intersection geocoding workflow. And then there's also some new fields that we'd like to add. So the most important one that comes to mind is non-motorist location, because as a personal example, I was biking to work a few months ago and there was a rollover crash on US 36. Unfortunately, no one was injured, but it really brings to mind the fact that there is a nearby facility, a bike path, and I had gotten to the scene a little bit afterwards in the car, had gone all the way off the highway and onto the multi-use path. And so it's an important example of knowing where every individual involved in the crash is, especially when the crash involves more than just the roadway itself. So if there's a bike lane or a separated or protected bike facility, a multi-use path, all of these are really important locations to consider when looking at the crash analysis as a whole. And then other fields that we'd like to add include data on helmet and seatbelt use, just as additional background information. And then adding information on the injury severity level for each individual involved in the crash so that we can show that in the pop-up as well. I would like to also acknowledge other municipalities' Vision Zero and Safer Streets for All projects. And this dashboard's one measure that Broomfield's implementing to increase public access to current traffic safety information and reduce the number of crashes and serious injuries. And I have our contact information with our emails, as well as a QR code, which opens the mobile view of the dashboard, which is not full featured, but the link is the same to the desktop version of the dashboard as well. Thank you, and I'm open to questions.
Right, awesome. Thanks, Ben. Thanks, Bryce. We have a couple of minutes for questions. I do see one from Jenny. Looks like Bryce responded a little bit to that, but I don't know if either of you want to expand on that, or Jenny, does that answer what you were getting at?
Yeah, Jenny, is there any, or Jenny or Alyssa, I believe actually, is there any follow-up to those questions?
Nope, I'm good, thanks.
Okay, great. Do we have any other questions for City County of Broomfield? I guess I have a quick one. As it relates, I know, Bryce, you had said that you are looking to do some of those online videos or with the sergeants to have it so that the officers can get the training kind of whenever or as they're trained on. Is there still an idea to do those semi-regularly in person though? Have you had any experience with greater? I know it's a very recent program, but like more retention if it's done in person in conjunction with the online offerings?
Yeah, that is a good question. So last year was the first year that we did this. So this year, I think we're leaning towards trying it virtually, and then maybe we can have a chat with the traffic sergeants and see what the feedback was, see if they thought it was as valuable as in person. Yeah, we're definitely open to continuing it in person. I do think it is important maybe to do at least offer like half of the sessions in person or something. Because I think it also helps to have that face-to-face interaction. Yeah.
Okay. Well, and then just to follow up on that, did you already have a sort of an established relationship with the police department before, so you could lean upon, or was this a new thing? And how did you approach that conversation with the traffic sergeants?
Yeah, for us, it was really easy. I have biweekly meetings with the traffic team. So I see them all the time, and it was simply just bringing it up at one of those meetings, and they thought it would be a great idea to offer that for all of the patrol.
Yeah, great.
Well, thank you for listening to us, everybody, and thanks for having us on, Eric.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you both.
Appreciate everyone.
All right, and now in the kind of the light of this law enforcement engagement and working to improve the data as it comes in and not necessarily needing to clean on the back end. I want to introduce Celeste Chavez-Shin from Stolfus and Associates. She really led up the project from the traffic records coordinator to work on updating this document, make it more useful, make it more user-friendly, and I will turn it over to her.
Thanks, Eric. Hi, everyone. I'm Celeste Chavez-Shin, like Eric said, with Stolfus and Associates. I am here representing the Statewide Traffic Advisory Committee, or STRAC, and I have presented to you all in the past with Alyssa. So this is just a chance for us to really share the manual itself widely, as well as some of the training materials that the task force, the Crash Manual Task Force, created during this endeavor. So just a little bit of background for those of you that might not know or were not at that other presentation. The Crash Manual Task Force was created kind of at the end of 2022 as a result of just people sharing that there were some things on the manual that were a little bit not super clear, or they didn't know really what to do in some cases, or there was really a difference in how certain agencies were filling out certain fields. And also on the back end, data analysts shared that there were some fields that were potentially missing or not quite what they wanted to be receiving, and there was a lot of cleaning effort that was being done on the back end. So that's why the manual task force was created, and they started with a survey that they deployed. I think it was like January of 2023 was when it first went out. We had 92 law enforcement respondents from there, as well as 13 analysts that shared their feedback on the manual itself. We followed up with some one-on-one meetings with individuals after that and really honed in on the topics that needed some clarification. So those topics were vehicle classification and function, secondary crash, harmful events, location, amended reports, narratives, and impairment. So I'm going to go ahead and just drop the link to the manual itself here in the chat. The manual will eventually live on the STRAC website, which is hosted by CDOT. Currently, the website is undergoing some revamping. So for now, download this and save it locally. I think the link is live for about 30 days. After that, if you guys are looking for it and need it, reach out to me and I'll send it to you again, or reach out to Alyssa Heron from CDOT and she can also share it with you. Yeah, so generally, we just went through and modified a few things. Some of the biggest things that changed were we got rid of the little box that kind of told you what was different between the DR2447 and the DR3447, mainly because it wasn't really relevant anymore. So we got rid of that. And then we clarified a lot of just language modifications and things of that nature. And the other thing too was we added some purposes for some of the fields. So trying to give law enforcement officers a sense of why we were needing some of those fields and why they're so important on the back end, on the data analyst side. Yeah, so I think a few people might be having trouble accessing the link. So Captain Grimsley, I will follow up with you later and see if we can get that to work. I do have a few other notifications that people are accessing it. So I'm not sure why it's not working specifically for you. Yeah, so for example, amended reports, we went in here and added more information as to when to fill things out, and then added, the purpose and also some guidance as to, hey, tell us in the narrative that this is an amended report. That way the analysts can kind of pair the original and the amended. One of the ones that format-wise kind of changed a lot was this vehicle type. We went through and created a table with guidance on it instead of just a whole bunch of I think it was just bullet points that were in here before. So we thought this was easier to read and navigate. And we also included a little bit of a graphic to guide through how you go through classifying the vehicle itself, and then getting to special function if there was one. Just a few examples of what changed in there. And I think the part that most of the Crash Manual Task Force is most proud of are these videos that are currently on the CDOT website. So if you click on those, it'll take you to a video on secondary crash, harmful event, location, amended reports, and narrative field. So really short and sweet, 3 to 5 minute long videos that can be easily shared and looked at, that really gives you guidance as to why we're talking about that specific topic, what the guidance is, and just short and sweet that you can add to any sort of training that you're doing, or if you're meeting right before going out for 15 minutes, it only takes 3 minutes to actually watch it together. So that is pretty much all I have for you all today.
All right, excellent. Does anybody have any questions for Celeste? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised or anything in the chat, but no, I really appreciate you joining in for sharing this. I know it was a lot of work to get that update made in those videos, and I think they're really helpful. So I guess the one ask I have for some of our local government partners here is if you could share these out with your agencies. I mean, many of your agencies are likely, doing a fine job already, but if we can just, the more people we can get these in the hands of or raise the awareness of it, there might be something that clicks with someone that maybe another resource wasn't doing the trick. So just if you could pass this along to your law enforcement partners, so they're aware of it, that would be really helpful. All right, great. Thank you so much, Les.
Thanks, Eric.
All right, so we are wrapping up the tail ends here. Now that we've got our great presentations from our guests, I just want to share a couple of quick updates on our end, and then invite anybody to share anything of their own. So as we go into our crash data updates, we do have 2024 crash data from CDOT that our team has been working on. And they're nearly complete with doing the geocoding and quality checks that we typically will do for the data. So we are expecting to be able to provide that for download later in October, as well as updating the crash data years and functionality in our crash data dashboard. So currently it's from 2019 through 2023, but it will be all in 2020 to 2024, which we're especially excited about to all be on the DR3447 schema inside. Our GIS team is very happy about that. As far as some of the updates, some of the things that we're looking at or that we'll be unrolling out is updating the symbology, actually inspired by Ben. I saw that and thought that was really great, and thought that we should probably add that to ours too. So appreciate that, Ben. We'll be adding some more detailed information about the individual traffic units involved with crashes. Currently on the map, similar to when Ben was showing, if you click on a point that it would indicate a crash, in our dashboard, there's a pop-up with some information, and it would list the movements and the contributing factors as reported for the crash on the back end, but it was kind of just as a list. And so to make it clearer, to make it more useful, the new version will have like traffic unit 1, traffic unit 2, or non-motorist, and those factors associated with the individual units. Just make it a little more easy to understand and the circumstances behind the crash with the data we can provide. We'll also be looking at consolidating some of the crash type information. It comes out very detailed from CDOT, which if you're doing like a full-on analysis of something, having those detailed values can be really crucial. We felt for this update, we wanted to provide something that kind of breaks it down a little bit. We're still leaving the CDOT crash type in there, but we're just providing more of a consolidated list. For example, things that are fixed objects, not being able to kind of break those down into one type of category, things like that. We're going to be including some other filters, including by functional class, I think is the plan, the speed limits. There's more than this, but just wanted to highlight some of the main ones that we were excited about. And so we're looking forward to rolling that out for everyone to be able to use in their workflows later in October. That is, oh, we have a question from Ben.
Yes, I was wondering for the functional class specifically, was that done with a spatial overlay, or is that actually available in the DR3447 report? Because that was something we were looking at for adding for ours as well, but it was too challenging because we had to overlay crash points with streets, and so the accuracy of that was really difficult to get correct.
Right. I'll leave that. I believe it is based. It's not. It's kind of the spatial overlay, but we do have access to the state's linear referencing system, and all of our data is now tied to that system. So I believe it's pulling directly from where it lies on the system. But I'll let Byron back me up or correct me.
Yeah, no, that's right. We haven't implemented this yet, so we might run into some of those nuances, Ben. But yeah, we're going to lean on the linear referencing system and having the points mostly tied to it. We do have 2020 and 2021 data that are not tied to the LRS, which will be a little more challenging, but we may match the on-road field to like the route name too, to ensure that we're getting the right route if there's two that are captured in a buffer. So that's kind of our thoughts right now.
Thanks, Byron. Really appreciate the clarification on that.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. If anyone has any more questions about the dashboard, feel free to reach out. I do want to give a little space there if anyone does have any other updates to share. We can do that. But if not, I think we are just about at time. I do want to note that the next meeting, we don't have a date set, but based off of this 3 times a year schedule that we have been following and folks had said was working well, thinking our next meeting will probably be in February of 2026, and we'll likely be changing the schedule to be, instead of February, May, September, spaced out a little more evenly next year to be February, June, October. So look forward to that. Next year, we will send out a new calendar series of invites for those times. Again, I want to thank everyone for being here, for participating, not just today, but in past meetings, past calls. I've probably talked with almost everyone on this call multiple times before, so appreciate you all being here. And if you have any questions or want to know how you can be engaged in any other way, just please reach out to me directly. All right, thank you.
Thank you very much.